statutory eminent domain authority, and he puts that in quotes, for public utilities. He said, however, this is a red herring, as this case has never been about eminent domain. Lone Oak has never asked to exercise it or even suggested a need to exercise it. Therefore, Lone Oak's arguments related to its prior waiver of eminent domain and any IURC's restriction on its use are merely hypothetical. I highlighted that and I asked my county attorney, I said, I need you to help me understand this. I said, if Lone Oak gets what they want, could they use eminent domain? And he said, yes. The number of times those words were mentioned in the lawsuit, I would tell your county commissioner to please get your county attorney and let them read these documents for themselves. I think this is a big, huge thing. And again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving legal advice, but I'm reading you what I'm saying, what they've said to me. So I'm going to go on to the next section here, and this is covering Indiana Citizens Planner Guide, Chapter 8, Zoning Ordinances, Rural Communities, U.S. Supreme Court Law and Aesthetics, Chapter 3, Avoiding Pitfalls and Property Rights and Impacts to Property Values. If you are a citizens planner and you sit on a planning commission or a BZA, you can Google this, Indiana Citizens Planner Guide, and there's 13 chapters for your education. If you are a public being impacted by this, you need to read it too, because you need to know how to do their jobs better than they do, because they sometimes don't know how to do their jobs, and so helping them has been crucial. This is Chapter 8 on zoning ordinances, and I have highlighted several parts here, and it says it right in Chapter 8 when you sit on a planning commission. Indiana Code lists the following purposes for local zoning ordinances. It's to securing adequate light, air, and convenience of access and safety from fire, flood, and other dangers, lessening or avoiding congestion in public ways, promoting the public health, safety, comfort, morals, convenience, and general welfare, and otherwise accomplishing the purposes of Chapter 4 of the Indiana Code and legal planning and zoning. It says the primary objectives of general welfare include protection of property values, lower public costs, and enhancing the livability of residential neighborhoods. When you get on there further, it'll have a chapter on agricultural districts. The purpose of an agricultural district is to provide for and preserve viable agricultural land. In the past, many communities have struggled with what uses to permit within the agricultural districts. And it says that non-agricultural or maintenance structures should be kept to a minimum. This also reduces the need for potentially extensive public utility extensions to these often outlying properties. And I have a little red note there that says, interesting, how many public utility extensions are now being placed in rural areas. The substations, the high voltage tower lines, battery storage, now we have industrial power plants, all in the rural areas. This should be excellent guidance to Planning Commission members. And then it goes on about farmland preservation. It says farmland preservation is not just about food supply, it's about rural landscape and lifestyle. When people move to the country, they want to see the country. They love the views of the country. They don't mind the smells of the country. I don't mind the smells of the country. But I want you to know, in one of the published study, and it was also put in the Rhode Island University study on property values, it's at the bottom of the slide. Solar installations require over 10 times more land area than non-renewable sources to generate the same amount of energy. And the requirement of large tracts of land for their construction has become the largest cause of land use change in the United States. Your keywords there are land use change, because the developer says this is going to go back to agricultural activity, right? And this says land use change. So we'll talk about farmland and returning to ag soon. Also, Chapter 8 talks about aesthetics. There's a U.S. Supreme Court that was upheld the right of communities to use zoning for aesthetics in a landmark 1954 decision, Berman versus Parker. I'm not going to read the whole decision there for you, but this law clearly gives the right to uphold aesthetics views for legitimate governmental purpose in land use regulation. This is a U.S. Supreme Court law, so don't tell me, Mr. Solar Developer, that you're going to bully me into telling me that I can't say that I do not want a industrial, in my agricultural area. And if you think just throwing some little shrubs down on the ground is going to block that, they're not going to get 15 to 20 foot tall. And so this is a U.S. Supreme Court law. So please don't let any solar developers bully your county commissioners about this either, because you have the right to use zoning ordinances. And I've asked numerous attorneys about that. So I find that very interesting. But according to solar developers and appraisers that work for them, view shed shouldn't matter. and homeowners are not entitled to a view. I heard that one time from a solar developer, you're not entitled to a view. A landowner who had signed up for solar said that they weren't entitled, that his neighbor was not entitled to a view. But homeowners are, and I say here, the U.S. Supreme Court sure thinks aesthetics are important. So let's talk about property rights. One of the biggest questions I get asked is about the property values. Property values are protected under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. And the first attorney, Terry Hall, and back in one of those prior slides, it was a lot of reading, but she was the first one that brought that up, saying how this could be an unfair taking. And in chapter 3 of the Indiana Citizens Planner Guide, there's a chapter called Avoiding Pitfalls, and there's a highlight there talking about unfair taking. But your property rights are protected under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It is a civil rights issue because your government cannot take from you without a fair compensation. So, anyways, and I say here, the Fifth Amendment to our nation's Constitution protects the right to property in two ways. First, it states that a person may not be deprived of property by the government without due process of law or fair procedures. In addition, it sets the limits on traditional practice of eminent domain, such as when the government takes private property to build a public road. Under the Fifth Amendment, such takings must be for a public use and require just compensation at market value for the property seized. In 2019, there were 13 real estate brokers from multiple agencies, RE/MAX, Carpenter, Tucker, Berkshire Hathaway, etc., and they submitted written testimony to the Madison County BZA. They provided in writing their experiences with buyer and seller representation with homes that were impacted by Lone Oak Solar. These testimonies included buyer negative feedback, buyers refusing to make offers, and expired listings not selling because of the proposed solar project. It hadn't even been built yet, and this was happening. All of these brokers gave opinion that there would be injury to property values. And then in August of 2019, right before our county government voted yes for it, I was able to obtain an actual sale of a negative 16.5% decline. This buyer testified in person that they reluctantly decided to move forward with the purchase, but would not pay a single penny more because they were fearful of what could happen to their home value if the solar was built. In contrast to the deficiencies of the market study, numerous real estate realtors, and this is actually Attorney Terry Hall's statement, it's right here, and I'm going to go into all of it, but she goes on to say that this could give way to an unfair claim against the United States government over taking of property, and she puts it in that, and that's her quote, direct quote. So again, we're back to the Citizens Planner Guide, and I told you about Chapter 3, Avoiding Pitfalls. County commissioners and planning commission members, please listen to this part. Beware of takings. Takings can generally be defined as a seizure of private property or substantial deprivation of the right to its free use or enjoyment as a result of government action, which for the property owner must be compensated. In some cases, actions of a plan commission or BZA that have good intentions can be taken to court and determined to be takings, causing numerous problems. Are you guys still getting this echo too? I'm not sure if it's annoying, and I can try and just talk loud. I can try and talk loud for a while, but I keep hearing the echo.
You're okay.
Okay, can you hear? Does anybody hear me okay if I just talk real loud, or would you rather have me on the mic?
Yeah, you don't have to be right on it. Just
Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going. So this goes into property rights and overview of property rights in law. There's 3 types of property rights: the right to use and enjoyment, right of exclusion, and the right to transfer. I went to Tucker School of Real Estate when I became licensed, and in my Tucker book, 16th edition, they refer to the ownership of real property as a bundle of rights. It's right of possession, right to control the property within the framework of the law, right to enjoy it, that is to use the property in any legal manner, right of exclusion to keep others from entering or using the property, and right of disposition to sell it, will it, transfer it, or otherwise dispose or encumber the property. The right of use and enjoyment, I go in and tell you, explaining that this is your right to enjoy your property. If light, air, dust, noise, sound impacts you from your neighbor, you have an issue of a property rights violation. That's why we have zoning laws. That's why we have zoning laws to protect us. The right of exclusion and then the right of transfer. These slides go into more details, but I'm going to just keep moving along. But what about view shed? Are homeowners entitled to a view? So when a buyer purchases a property, they check the zoning of that property and the surrounding properties, and this is known as your buyer due diligence. When I represent a buyer, I help them understand their diligence, and I put them to work to go ask questions. And if anyone is buying in the rural communities in any state right now, I'd be like, you better go check and see what the zoning is for solar, wind, BESS, battery, which is battery energy storage system, and check those farmers around where you're looking. You never know. I can't even tell you how many stories that I have been over the past 6 years of people that have called me and it was not disclosed. They ended up buying, and then their neighbors came down and said, welcome to the solar farm, you're right in the middle of it. And they had no clue, absolutely none. And I find that horrible, absolutely horrible. And a lot of those sales too are used in real estate studies, but the thing of it is if a seller doesn't disclose and a buyer doesn't know, you have to go talk to the realtors and the parties involved to really understand, was there an impact? How did that buyer feel, and did the seller disclose it? So if it is zoned agriculture, a buyer anticipates having agricultural views and experiencing those activities. The U.S. Department of Agriculture defines agriculture as everything from farm to table. This includes the production, processing, distribution, sale of food, feed, and fiber. It's the science and practice of farming, including cultivation of the soil for the growing of crops and rearing of animals to provide food, wool, and other products. Nowhere does it say solar panels in that. Just want to make sure you understood that. A buyer who moves to a rural community expects to see farms, ranches, crops, fields, livestock, tractors, pastures, and a natural landscape, and all the smells and noise that comes with it. Indiana does have right to farm laws. Industrial solar power plants are not part of agricultural, despite calling them farms. At least, I have not read any changes in the USDA ag definitions. A buyer that sees industrial or commercial next door will anticipate shopping, retail, business, warehouse, factories. So it's all about the zoning and our planning commissions following their comprehensive plans. So there is a legal term called coming to the nuisance. Normally I have Lorene explain that, but this is an attorney, Scott Federoff. He defined it as coming to the nuisance is a legal term that describes a situation where someone cannot complain about a nuisance like noise, odors, or disturbances if they were aware or should have been aware of that nuisance before they moved into the area or bought the property. Imagine you move into a neighborhood where a factory has been operating for years, making loud noises and emitting smells. If you knew about those issues before you decided to live there, you might not have the right to complain about them later. The principle is based upon the idea that you accepted those conditions of the area when you chose to live there. However, homeowners who have lived there first have the right to object to a new development that pose nuisances. Have you guys ever read a solar lease? Have your county commissioners ever got their hands on a solar lease and actually read it? Because they won't give them to you. They typically file memorandums of the solar leases, but not the whole full lease. You need to read one, and I do have several copies. We'll get to that. And certainly those buyers who move to rural communities understand that they will be dealing with agricultural activities. So this could actually, I could see this happening with a CAFO, confined animal feeding operation. You move to the country and one day the wind was going one way, and then when you move in, now it's coming from that direction of the pig farmer next door. You can't complain. He was there first. But rural homeowners complained about the solar coming to them because we were here first. We have a right to complain. And there are nuisances, because let's read a solar lease together. This was a letter submitted by a homeowner who was going to be right across the street from it. He said, have any of you ever read a solar lease that landowners sign? Unless you show a lot of interest in signing up your farmland, the leases are hard to gain. The Indiana state law allows for recording of memorandums of leases, but the full lease is not even available in our recorder's office for review. But because I have farmland, I asked for a lease and Low Note gave me one. And there's section 2, and I'm going to read some of this to you. Section 2.1, owner hereby grants and conveys to grantee the following additional and easements upon, over, across, and under the property, and all property that is adjacent to or relatively nearby the property and is owned or controlled by the owner. Interference, they have an exclusive easement for electromagnetic, audio, visual, view, light, noise, vibration, electrical, radio interference, or other effects attributable to the solar generating equipment, the project, or any site activities. In no event shall grantee or its related persons be liable to owner for property damage or personal injuries to the owner or its related persons attributed to risks of known and unknown dangers associated with the normal day-to-day operation of electrical generating facilities, such as noise, electromagnetic fields, and glare, or any runoff or altered drainage patterns resulting from grantee's grading of the property. Some farmers in a neighboring Indiana county have regretted signing in one out of their leases. These leases have been shared with us and with me, and I want to share those with you. Here's another section, 8.3. Owner recognizes the need to exercise extreme caution when in close proximity to any project facilities. Owner agrees to exercise caution at all times and to advise the owner parties to do the same. Owner shall take reasonable measures to avoid all risks associated with the electromagnetic fields resulting from the production of transmission of electricity, and owner waives all claims and causes of action whatsoever, whether currently existing or that may otherwise arise or accrue at any time in the future, and that the owner possesses or otherwise may possess against grantees, parties arising from or relating to such risks, provided, however, such waiver shall not be effective to the extent that the grantee engages in gross knowledge, acts, or willful misconduct. The owner acknowledges that certain aspects inherent to the operation of solar energy facilities may result in some nuisance. Here's the word I've been looking for, some nuisance, such as visual impacts, possible increased noise levels, possible glare, and other possible effects of electrical generation and transmission, including, without limitation, potential interference with your radio, television, telephone, mobile telephone, or other electronic devices. Anybody have a pacemaker? That's a concern. Without limiting the grant of easements made in Section 2 of this agreement, again, you're the owner, he understands and has been informed by the grantee that the project facilities on the property may result in some nuisances. He hereby accepts these nuisances, and owner waives its right to object to such a nuisance, provided that grantee complies with its obligations in this agreement. How many times did the solar developer just call their own project a nuisance? And this person says, solar leases, along with good neighbor agreements, are drafted by attorneys that work for solar developers. They contain gag orders, unduly restrictions, and waivers that force those who sign to always support the project no matter what. Those that participate and have signed up their land may be in agreement to waive any future claims, and they can disregard their own health and agree to all of these nuisances, but I have not. And I will hold accountable anyone for damages to my property, to my health, and my family's health. We don't know what the future holds for these large-scale projects, nor do we fully know the extent of harm they may cause. I do appreciate the property value guarantee in Madison County Solar Ordinance, the reduction of size in the solar plants, and the protection of our prime farmland and the testing of our wells. But I also ask your planning commission to support the planning commission to support this ordinance, but I still ask that language be added to protect waterways and floodplains by keeping solars at a safe distance. That was a speech given to our public commission when we drafted our ordinance. And I thought that was pretty interesting about all of the language in a solar lease. I do have several copies now of solar leases. This is on Viewshed. It's always about location, location, location when it comes to real estate. And I said that earlier, how studies show that the location and its view have a real big impact on the price. Studies show that homes are, sell for more money at lakefront, beachfront, oceanfront. So I talk about gaslighting and an insult of intelligence. With the layout and design of large-scale solar plants, they sprawl throughout the countryside, engulfing homeowners. Homeowners are being forced to live inside industrial plants. Envision this, that no matter what window you look out of or what door you exit, your view is 6-foot chain link fence with barbed wire and 15 to 20-foot solar panels. And it may take a few miles of driving before you even exit this facility. Knowing how Viewshed has always impacted property values, this is the worst kind of gaslighting, and it's an insult to intelligence when one realizes the massive size, in-depth scope, and design of magnitude of these power plants. When I put a property into the MLS system, I'm a part of my board, which is Municipal Indianapolis Board of Realtors. These are slides and sections of how I put one in, and it asks me, does it have a view? And I can select rural skyline, treed woods, valley, water, creek, stream, downtown, forest, garden, and there's tons of selections there. Mary Clay is the appraiser that I work with. She's a Master Appraisal Institute, an MAI designation. That's the highest you could get in that industry. And she said, since views from a residential property often carry a large premium, changes to a desirable view may be perceived by the market as having negative impact on value. When a desirable view is blocked, the question of damages is often a question of a butter's rights, a property owner's right to air, light, view, visibility, and access. This concept is particularly significant in areas where the market is largely driven by scenic landscape. And she is from Kentucky, so she talks about the bluegrass and historical districts. Among the arguments currently espoused by the solar industry to minimize the significance of a viewshed is that, quote, no one is entitled to a view. However, this opinion is contrary to that of the Federal National Mortgage Association. Did you know that Fannie Mae, as one of the two largest purchasers of mortgages in the secondary market, and along with the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, which is Freddie Mac, view is considered to be one of the property characteristics that their appraisers are required to consider as indicated on the following FNMA residential appraisal report. So when an appraiser comes out there you see it in circle view. They can give value to your home if you have one. So if you're not entitled to one, when you buy a home with a view, and then it gets destroyed, you definitely have, I would be upset there. So anyway, again, back to that one slide, that Citizens Planner Guide, if you're a planning commission, farmland preservation is not just about food supply, it's about the rural landscape and lifestyle. And again, I talked about the Supreme Court case on aesthetics. This is an excellent quote. If you serve on planning or county commissioners, zoning ordinances are enacted for the health, safety, and welfare of all residents, protecting property rights in both directions. The right to enjoy your land, but also the right of your neighbor to enjoy his or her land. Ordinances are intended to promote a safe, healthy, viable framework for development. Compatible land uses that work in harmony with each other to promote the developmental goals increase the value of community. There's a reason why certain uses are designated permitted and others are designated special uses. Special uses or exceptions are designated because they have characteristics that may or may not be compatible with the zoning district, and they require special scrutiny in design, siting, and developmental effects, and they may require additional restrictions to mitigate that incompatibility. Special uses whose incompatibility due to design, siting, or other relevant factors that cannot be mitigated by additional requirements or restrictions should not be approved. This is language that you will find in your planning commission book. So if you can't mitigate these projects, then you shouldn't be voting for them. And so that's that language, that right there for zoning, for your health, welfare, and your safety. And I, in my entire life, have never seen so many people come out of their homes into the courthouses over land use decisions and changes right now in the state of Indiana. In fact, in the 2024 election, more commissioners in the state of Indiana won seats, and that was a historical moment for us. As many commissioners that were changed. And I'm telling you right now, the groups that I'm connected with, it was all because of renewable energy, like solar, wind, battery. Yeah, that would be great, thank you. That'd be better. Thanks. Okay, so anyway, the groups that I'm connected with, I'm telling you, Benton County, White County, Pulaski County, DeKalb County, Huntington County, Grant County, an amazing battle in Grant County, Indiana, removing the entire county seat. In 2019, Henry County, in one election, took out all of the council and commissioners over a gigantic wind project that was going through Henry County, Indiana. And I mean, it's just been unbelievable seeing the people come out. And again, land use, it's all about land use. So that's a farm. Don't know if you can see that picture, but that's a farm. This is a power plant. And this is the study that I actually quoted you guys earlier about the largest change of land use in America. This is that actual study. And so there's a lesson to learn here. How did we get here and what's the history lesson? And as I told you before, I've been fighting this since 2019. And at the time, in 2019, North Carolina was the second largest in the state with solar development. And that was because North Carolina gave tax breaks and incentives. So they came down there and they flocked to North Carolina to build like crazy. And that caused the North Carolina Cooperative Extension and two professors to step into this battle. They are heroes. Professor Ron Heinegger, he's an agronomist and a soil scientist, and Professor Herbert Eckerlin, he's a mechanical engineer and he has degrees in aerospace dynamics. And that was, we flew Professor Eckerlin actually to Indiana in 2019 to testify on our behalf. But in 2019, Michael Maru was the appraiser that was used by the solar industry, Lone Oak, that when they came to Madison County. And then Cone Resnick and the Texas University studies were the only ones that we had at the time. These studies are mentioned in Kirkland's and Mary Clay's reviews, and I did my own research in 2019, and I noticed that back then the sizes and the locations of large-scale solar, if you didn't get into this and understand the differences, they were very different than what is being built. In 2019, the majority of solar plants in North Carolina were very small. I couldn't even find one larger than 71 megawatts. Okay. So these were what solar farms looked like back then. You don't see any houses. And then this is Jefferson County, and look how that looks. And this is Madison County, and look how that looks. They just sprawl through the countryside. They engulf homeowners on several sides. And this one is, this is St. Joe County. You can see all of the homes surrounded. And again, more pictures of it and more homes. And these parcels it's just unbelievable. These are the solar appraisers, Cone Resnick, Maru, and Richard Kirkland that I have taken on in different testimonies. Mary McClinton Clay has written reviews on all of them. And this is Mary McClinton Clay's resume, by the way. She is a spitfire. She's 70, I think she's 72, 74. What you see on the left, or on the right of the screen that's highlighted there in red, those are all her court cases that she's ever testified in. She's the only appraiser that I know of that's survived a Daubert challenge. If you don't know what that is, that's an extreme investigation over your credentials, that you are an expert, that you can testify. She's never lost a single court case in her entire career. Every time that she talks and has been in the courts over solar, she's always won. She's been to Colorado, Ohio, Indiana. She's done a lot. So anyway, you can see her resume is like 4 pages long, and she works for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and she is a world of knowledge. You want to talk about the real estate studies? Here they are. There's tons of them. And Mary Clay reviewed all of these, and anywhere from 2019, this one has a negative 12.5% up to, if you are within 3 miles, negative 7%. She estimated a 28%. And this is what is so important. I was asked to give my opinion about setbacks. This is from the Texas University study. Some estimated a negative impact associated with close distance between the home and the facility, and the larger the size. So the larger the solar farm, the closer you are, the more impact you're going to have. This is proven over and over, and here's highlights of each one of those sections. Some respondents estimated a negative impact on home prices associated with solar installations. Averaging estimates across residents responded, and this again from a 1.5 megawatt to 102 megawatt. The thing of it is that the smaller ones, like we have some in Madison County, the IMPA projects, they're in the cities, they're not in the rural communities, and they don't surround homes on all sides. They're very small. But you're also in the city. You have zoning that is, lots of traffic. You've got commercial, residential, you got different zonings and industrial in there. And so people expect to have that noise. That's totally different than being in the agricultural zoned areas. So it's a big difference. So again, the larger you are, the closer you are, the more impacts. And all of those definitely say that. Here's graphs and bars. And I'm going to start going a little bit faster. We have the Rhode Island University study. Do you know the largest solar farm in Rhode Island is 21 megawatts? The Rhode Island study covered Massachusetts and Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, 21 megawatts. In Massachusetts, 3 megawatts. But yet, and they still showed injury to property values on those, but it's very discouraging when you hear people talking about, oh, there's no injury to property values. Okay, well, which solar farm is it? How big was it? Where was it zoned? There's a lot of questions. How many homes did it impact? Did it surround homes on multiple sides? So what we do know right now is we have a negative 30% decline of value. That is a case study out of Clay County that Clay actually did. And I do want to read something here from her that I want to read verbatim. But I've been asked, how do you know of the property values, and it depends on the size, how close you are, how many sides you are impacted. But just though there is no study right now, not one, I gotta find that slide so I can read it, that has looked at a home that's been engulfed and surrounded on multiple sides. That 30% decline was a very massive solar farm that was close to a house. She told me I had 15 minutes, so I got to get through a lot more slides and catch up with you guys, because I have so much to tell you. How do I get 6 years into an hour? So that's rough. But
could we touch on the ag impacts?
Yes, let's just go on down to ag impacts. We'll do that, because this is so important. Here's the quote from Mary Clay. When using a proper damage study following USPEP guidelines, when the calculations reach over 50%, you might as well stop figuring. The diminution of value is so egregious that the home may no longer be marketable. And I just told you we have 30%, which is much smaller megawatt, that's only on one side. And I will tell you right now, in Mammoth Solar, which is Pulaski County, there are homes that cannot sell, and they are in litigation right now against the solar developer. And something else I do want to tell you guys too, real quick on the property values. Here's a statement from Chief Underwriter, First National Bank, who said they wouldn't even loan on a house that was going to be surrounded and engulfed by solar because of marketability issues. We've got that. This is in St. Joe County. The green dot is a house. But right now, in the Court of Appeals decision, Mammoth Solar versus Ehrlich, the Indiana Court of Appeals, I want you guys to make sure you understand this, has already issued that injury to property value exists. The testimony that I gave in 2020, 2021 provided enough evidence that those people proved they had injury to their property values, and they had to have standing. That gave them standing for their court case in that Mammoth versus Ehrlich. So when there's an argument about property values, the courts have already said it is, and that was 2020, and I have way more evidence now. And there's been more university studies that come out proving injury to property values. So it just gets really redundant and ridiculous over property values. So I told you about North Carolina, right? Professor Ron Heiniger, he wrote, the very first thing that came out from an agronomist was written by Ron Heiniger, NCSU professor and extension specialist. Solar farming, not a good use of agricultural land. Then he did a slideshow on the impacts of solar farms, and how he got involved was because county extension agents began to call him and they questioned him because the budget got shut down for the maintenance of the solar farm. So these maintenance companies for the solar industry were coming into county extension saying, hey, what chemical can I use to permanently sterilize the ground? And these agents freaked out, and they began to call the ag department at NCSU. And Ron Heiniger got involved, and he shows that in his slideshows. And then he joined forces with Professor Eckerlin, and they decided to go, and because the extension agents in every county were so inundated over solar, they're taking our farmland, and they want to use sterilant now to permanently sterilize the ground. So him and Eckerlin went and started to do all of these different presentations throughout North Carolina, and then the solar industry shut them down. And there's a big article, North Carolina state researchers say that the solar lobbying has silenced them. He's been threatened, his job's been threatened, and it's been quite the battle between these professors and the solar industry. So I want to get to North Carolina Cooperative Extension. They weigh in, they wrote an article called Considerations for Transferring Agricultural Land to Solar Panel Production. And if you haven't noticed this, this is an excellent poster. This is your corn, your soybean, and then the map on the far this right here on the left, that's all solar and wind. I would like to know why this is on the breadbasket of America. Look at that. In America, we lose 175 acres permanently every hour of farmland. This slide right here is about what the solar industry did and tried to lie about some of the studies. I actually have them lying about their white paper. It actually was not a peer-reviewed published white paper, and here is the Cooperative Extension agent from North Carolina saying, as you noted, it is not a peer-reviewed scientific paper. It's just a white paper compiled by input from numerous sources, and as such, finding information to contradict that is easily done. The truth of the matter is there's many things that we do not have research on solar. And so the outcome of what could, and then they wrote a second paper, can solar energy production be converted back to farmland? If you have not read these documents, you have got to do it. I mean, it is just unbelievable about the truth of what's going to happen. And there's a document that I printed for you guys. Let me grab it real quick. This is on Dearborn County. There's 3 copies of this. This is from Farms Under Threat, American Farmland Trust, and this talks about Indiana in a whole, and they have an integrative map. You can go on there and type in your county, and I did that. They have a program called Better Built Cities, and what they're asking communities to do is to look into the cities rather than going outward with urban sprawl and losing our farmland. And it says here for Dearborn County, if you are business as usual, up to 13,500 acres, and it talks about runaway sprawl, how much many acres that you would lose, and then if you would adopt the better built facilities, it would reduce that acreage down to 5,600. But this is all information on Dearborn County. And there is another study that the state did, and you can see here Dearborn County lost 9,790 acres. You actually are in not the worst red, but the second red down. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it is concerning how much land that this county has already lost. When you look at these maps, that one down there too, you can see all the red area, and then the dark green, that's all we have left. That is all we have left to supply food for our nation and others, because we export. Because we do export and feed us, that's it. That is the outlet we have. There's the Indiana Business Research Center for Kelly School of Business at IU. They did a fantastic study called Has Development Occurred at the Expense of Indiana's Prime Farmland? And they will show you how much we've lost. And Indiana is one. Here's something so important you guys to know. Indiana is only one of 3 states with over 50% of its land designated as prime farmland. Did you know that? Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa. And we are going to lose that designation if we haven't already done it. The latest study is that 450-some-thousand acres was lost in Indiana. They did that. Representative Kendall Culp did that study. But Indiana, being one of only 3, is just an unbelievable designation. A 2015 financial report by IU, and that's the study I just told you about, said Indiana contributes $44.2 billion to our economy. We are the 8th largest agricultural leader in the nation, exporting just over $4.6 billion in 2017. This is Indiana. Indiana's agricultural output supports nearly 190,000 Hoosier jobs, and using the most recent census data available, we create $14.9 billion in value added. So when I say when we lose farmland, and I told you we would lose $82 million on that study from Professor Stephen Miller, that is absolutely true. And there is a Planning Advisory Service memo that is about solar, and it says solar facilities can be appropriately located in areas where they are difficult to detect. The prior use of the land has been marginal, and there is no designated future use specified, not in growth areas, and it says in red, not on prime farmland, and not near recreational historic areas. A solar facility located by itself in a rural area, close to major transmission lines, not prominently visible from public rights-of-way or adjacent properties, and not located on growth areas on prime farmland again, or near cultural, historic, or recreational sites may be an acceptable land use with a beneficial impact on the community. That is directly from the American Planning Association, and I have it quoted up here on a poster, and I always ask, why are planning commissions not following their own advice? And hold on one second, I got one more.
Really give it a 2-minute warning.
Okay, 2-minute warning. One question that I do get asked a lot is, Denise, after all of the studies and things that you've done, what is the worst thing about solar? And when I started this battle, it was first property rights. You know, it was the injury to property values. As a real estate broker, I'm like, my gosh, what are they doing to my community? And then when I started to read about the toxicity in the solar panels, and I realized they also have PFAS contamination, PFAS. If you have heard of forever chemicals, I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but, and I learned of it from North Carolina. The North Carolina professors started telling me because they have a really bad problem with PFAS in North Carolina. And Mark Striner is an EPA scientist, and he produced 39 records proving that PFAS is on solar panels. So it is there. There's those states I told you about, Rhode Island and Boston, in Boston, Massachusetts. Anyways, there's judges. I have literal court orders telling them to, you know, you cannot use solar panels if it has PFAS on them. That's in our ordinance, no PFAS contamination. So once I realized about forever chemicals, and I watched that movie, if you haven't watched the movie Dark Waters, go rent that tonight on Prime. Watch that movie. And when I realized that, I about had a meltdown. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have waterways, we have ponds, we have, you know, our groundwater. This is Lone Oak Solar in water form on this view shed. We have that Pipe Creek runs right into the town of Frankton. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and then we have a natural flowing well, spring well, that's just not far right down in this area. And so then that was the next thing that I thought, oh gosh, this is the worst. I thought property values are bad. Now this is the worst. And then I started studying the agricultural loss, and I realized how much, $82 million, I realized how much agricultural contributes to our communities, the ripple effects, and how much we lose. We lost, between 1992 and 2012, we lost 33 million acres, and of that, 11 was prime farmland, permanently gone. 175 acres every hour. And this quote is the one that made me cry. So, the United States is blessed with a remarkably productive agricultural landscape. The precious arable land that sustains life on Earth is a finite and irreplaceable resource that is under heavy stress. Less than 6% of the Earth's surface is suitable for agricultural and growing cropland, pastureland, rangeland, and woodland support. Support a regionally diverse food and farming system capable of ensuring domestic food security. Agricultural land contributes to state and local economies, supplies lucrative export markets, and bolsters the nation's balance of trade. These exceptional natural resources sustain valuable wildlife habitat, provide flood control and fire suppression, scenic views, and resources for hunting and fishing. This land also acts as an enormous carbon sink, drawing down carbon from the atmosphere, which helps combat climate change. But by 2050, the demands on agriculture to provide sufficient food, fiber, and energy are expected to be 50 to 70% higher than they are now. Given a limited land area in the United States and the need to feed and house an increasing number of people, it is more important than ever to protect the agricultural land and the natural resources needed for long-term sustainability. Thank you. We're never going to get this land back. God only made so much of it. And that's the farmer's daughter in me that really ticks me off about farmland and wanting to fight for it. And then I understand the farmers, they want to make money, and they think this is a way to leave this to their children. And I have, for 6 years, thought of what kind of documentary could I make? How can I tell them that just please read this lawsuit? Listen about eminent domain. Listen to the Duttlinger family in Jasper County, Indiana. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, they were a farmer that signed up and terribly regretted it. And his niece testified in the Tippecanoe County BZA hearing just a few months ago. And I wish I could quote her, and I wish I could just play the video. If you could give me a few minutes, I would.
I can share it.
You have it?
Well, not now, but I can get it out.
You should listen to this little girl. She's a junior in high school. Read her uncle's letter, because she clearly says that they ripped off his topsoil. They damaged his tiles. And he said the subcontractor of the subcontractor of the subcontractor didn't care. They had a job to do and they did it. And he said he would never be able to farm that land again. And he's not the only one. And, they all said about not removing topsoil, but they have. And once you disturb that, it's not going to be gained. Professor Ron Heinecker, there's so many articles, and we do have Byron Jenkinson. I finally, after a few years, found a retired Purdue agronomist right here in Indiana. Thank God that he would come out and talk. And he's been to Tippecanoe counties where he lives, but he spoke in Tippecanoe County, in Putnam County, in Madison County. And he's doing an amazing job trying to share his views about the injury to the farmland. So, and here's something else. One more thing. I'm sorry. This is all about global warming and climate change, right? Why are we doing this? That's what I said. Renewable energy. You have to have renewable energy. Well, my question is, why are we decommissioning this? Because if this is your concern, and we have to have this type of energy, then in 35 years, how are you going to replace the solar energy or the wind energy? You're going to build more? What are you going to do? Go find another 2,000 acres to put this up? This doesn't make any sense to me. If we must have renewables, then why are we decommissioning? If that's what you believe in, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And the other thing is decommissioning plans. That's a whole other topic. But under the Obama administration, the Bureau of Land Management said that on federal lands they want a full decommissioning. Well, that's the federal lands. Well, isn't our prime farmland good enough for that? But no, decommissioning plans, or they will abandon everything beyond 36 inches in the ground, cabling, broken pylons. How is a farmer gonna dig that in plows and return that to ag when you look at those decommissioning plans? And the other thing, in 2019, we only accepted a $5.6 million bond. Professor Eckerlin is an expert in decommissioning, and at that time period, we needed like 11 to 13 million in 2019. Now, we have inflation and everything else. What do you think that we're gonna need now to decommission that? So, you know, that's a whole other topic on decommissioning and how that's insufficient. So, okay, question and answer time.
First off, I want to say thank you for coming down and spending the night with us. Denise was referred to me by another friend as the Queen of Solar, and I was like, well, I thought I was talking to the Queen of Solar, but she's been right. Denise is great and awesome, and we thank you for coming. Lorene White, who was supposed to be here tonight, we've reached out to her for legal counsel, and it's not sexy, but that is the fight we're having now. So it's really important to raise the money. Bobby informed me we've reached $1,000 of our $3,000 goal tonight, which is awesome. So let's keep it up. If you know somebody, ask somebody, and let's really take advantage of that opportunity to match. And Lorene White is awesome as well. She's a firecracker. We will do question and answer, but I do want to say if you're not on the newsletter and you want any of these documents, make sure me, Bobby, Ellen, or Michelle Dudley has your email address, and we can disperse these documents. Denise says they're not a secret, so just let me know what you want. And now we'll do Q&A?
Yeah.
Did I forget anything, Bobby? Okay. So, what is the standard regulation regarding lighting on the solar sites? Like, I guess, how is that typically managed or mitigated? And we'll try to do a minute responses so we can get through these.
So applications from the solar industry can have all different kinds of things on there. It depends on where they're putting their generators and their substations and all of those things. I have no idea what they're going to want for lighting, but in an ordinance for lighting, it shouldn't be viewable from any of the homeowners. That's specifically, it needs to be far away from homeowners. You don't want lights all 24/7 shining in your house or on you. The glare for the panels is the same thing. They should not have any glare. And yeah, I have slides here where they tell you in Jefferson County, in their Idlewild solar ordinance, in their lease, it says they won't have any glare, or the application, there won't be any glare, and yet in the lease that they sign with the landowners, it says glare. And I do want to tell you guys, up here on this table right here, this front table, those are my one-pagers. That's my Governor Braun file. When I've testified in committee, and you got to just tell somebody, quick page, one-pager, on pages on different subjects, you should come over and take pictures of those, and I will actually give that to you guys tonight. You can have it, but come take pictures of those documents.
Okay, and a primary concern in our community is the noise. What do you see being the typical standard to mitigate noise? Setbacks, but is there anything else?
Yes. So Attorney Lorene White has done numerous studies on the noise. We put in our ordinance that the converters, they need to be encapsulated. That's part of it, because if those are encapsulated, you won't hear that as much. But again, the setbacks need to be far away. In our ordinance, they're not allowed to surround homes on 2 and 3 sides. And there's other counties that have a larger setback. Some of them use what they have for a CAFO. So I don't know what the CAFO standards are for Dearborn County, but Shelby County used that. I believe it was like 650 feet, maybe 660 feet, something like that for a CAFO distance. Others have had 1,000. We set ours at 250, but we also have restrictions on our prime farmland. So we won't allow anyone to have, it's a 400 acre. That's the first of all we did, was reduce the size that they're allowed to have. And of that 400 acres, we're only giving up 10% prime farmland. So they're gonna have to go get 10% and 90% brown lands if they wanna find a project in Madison County.
Thank you. All right. From one farmer's daughter to another, I have a fear that if or when I inherit my family farm, I will not be able to afford to keep the land, especially with small-scale farms and Dearborn County no longer being profitable. What do you have to say to the future generations of farmers whose last resort would be selling, bankruptcy, or solar farms? What's the alternative?
When I'm in public meetings, do you want to know who cries the most? It's not the homeowner that's getting surrounded. It's the young farmer. I have seen so many more testimonies of young farmers that want to farm. And if you want to leave a legacy and you need to sell, keep it in farming agricultural and go find that young farmer. There are plenty of farmers that I know in Madison County, but around, that would pay good price for farmland. Farmland is just going up and up and up. And like I said, this resource is, God just doesn't make any more of it. But if you want to destroy it, go sign it up for solar, because I promise you that's exactly what's going to happen, and it will never be farmed again. One of the last things that I said to my county government in 2019 before I walked away from that podium was this: one of these days you're going to look back, and you're going to look back in great pride or in great shame. What have you done to this land and the rural communities? And what will be happen to that land? And if you are a landowner or a farmer, find those farmers, find those young farmers, go to 4-H meetings and talk to them. Work out a contract, land contract, but keep it in agricultural production for your sake of your children and your grandchildren to eat. Keep that farmland going. That's what I'd say.
Thanks, Denise. All right, the next one's a little lighter. And I think I can anticipate your response. Are you aware of any livestock grazing in Indiana and solar farms? It seems like a risk that energy companies would not want to take on, like damage to their equipment, things like that.
Let me tell you what Ron Heidegger told me. He said in North Carolina, they bring all that sheep in for a photo op, they take the pictures, and then they're gone. There's no sheep in North Carolina. In Putnam County, the amount of sheep that they wanted to bring in, due to the size of the project, there's never, ever going to be a way that those sheep will graze all of that, number one. Number two, if you're a sheep farmer, you know that sheep are picky. They don't eat everything. You get a bunch of goats, but I guess the goats would probably jump on the panels and there'd probably be injury to the solar panels. Sheep are not the easiest animals to take care of. A lot of veterinarian bills, and we have a heat island effect too. There's never been any studies about what this could do to the sheep, but we do know that the ground underneath these panels is a lot hotter. So you got to provide water, you've got to provide veterinary care, you have to have enough to be able to graze it. The whole thing for bringing in the sheep is so they don't have to mow as much, right? Because the more the mowing, then the more compaction that you have. But according to North Carolina State University and the professors and the agronomists that I've spoken to, this is a big issue, because no matter what you do, you have to mow, and you're going to have to maintain those weeds. If you look at Professor Heidegger's slideshow, which is in my Google Drive that you should have, he'll show you some of these solar farms, and they have like trees growing up in the middle of them, and weeds and briars. If you don't mow your yard for 5 years, what's going to look like? And so you're going to have to do some kind of control over weeds, and mowing is just going to have to be part of it. There's no way around that. And if you want to start talking about the things that can grow, they talk about the pollinators and so forth. That's a whole other topic with Professor Ron Heidegger that you should read in my documentation. I've got it's called the Heidegger email. Write that down. Y'all got to read that. You got to read the Heidegger email, because he'll go into all of the different types of pollinators and so forth, and what can grow here in Indiana and what is not going to grow here in Indiana. So that's a really good one to read. But as far as the sheep, I think that's a lost cause. Oh, and there is a study that Ron Heidegger told me that was done in New York City, where they had this bright idea, it was someplace in New York, where they're going to bring in sheep, and the coyotes and stuff ate them, and the predators, and it didn't work out. So they abandoned that idea as using as sheep to maintain stuff. So that was another story I was told. I don't think sheep's going to work out.
All right. Our Plan Commission members have been told that if our ordinance deters the developer, the leaseholders will sue the county for loss of income. How could the county be sued for citizens' loss of income if the solar development never had an application or any approval?
Well, I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to say that right off the bat. So this answer is just going to be what I've heard and what I've experienced. You have to prove that you're injured. So if there's no application and there's no approval, then how are they injured? I guess it'd be my first question. There would have to be, in my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, but this would have to go through the process of being approved or denied. And but as I said, there are plenty of attorneys that have given legal opinion, and one of them is Mr. BZA member, Mr. Planning Commission member, you have to vote for me or you're going to get sued. And that can come from either side. I don't, but that is not what they are to consider. They are to consider zoning laws. Indiana Code 36, health, welfare, safety, property values. What does the Dearborn County Comprehensive Plan say? What does it say about the rural communities? What does it say about your farmland? What does it say about the growth? And if you guys are not participating in that comprehensive plan, maybe you don't know how government works, but every so often they are required by state law to update that comprehensive plan. And let me tell you, when solar came to Madison County, every one of the rural communities people, we were begging them to fill out this survey, because your word, what you want in Dearborn County, you decide that. That's what a comprehensive plan is about. And the number one duty of the Planning Commission members is to carry out that comprehensive plan. It'll tell you that in Chapter 1 on planning basics. So fill out those surveys, because we went to task on that, and guess what? When it came time to do a solar ordinance, we looked at our comprehensive plan, and the people that helped us draft that, I will never forget it. He stood before our county commissioners and he said, we received an overwhelming response to protect Madison County's prime farmland. So you want to protect your land, get involved in your comprehensive plan.
This is a good time to say we're doing our comprehensive plan now. I reached out to Nicole and she responded to my email letting me know that the solar ordinance will come first and the comprehensive plan update next. So reach out to her, look online, get the surveys, and make sure you fill them out. And if you have any questions, we're all getting to know each other very well, so just reach out. But yes, and Denise has a very good point. I want to emphasize that they have to consider public input for the comprehensive plan, and it becomes the guideline for the zoning ordinance. So it's very important that we do that. All right, what common mistakes do you see grassroots resistance movements make in this situation?
I'm going to speak from experience. Don't yell at your commissioners. Don't yell at your planning commission members. Don't break down and have an emotional fit in front of them. But you absolutely can be stern. You can be confident, and you can be bold, and you can say how you feel with emotion, as far as, I understand, because it is an emotional battle, but you can absolutely say from your heart what you want to say, but you're never going to get anywhere when you start yelling profanity. Number one big thing. But you do need a Katrina Hunter in your group. And let me tell you about Katrina Hunter. Her house was surrounded on 3 sides, and she was a homeowner. And she went to all the homeowners around that were going to be engulfed by Lone Oak Solar. And she came before the BZA and she said this. She said, my name is Katrina Hunter and I live at blah, 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 Frankton, Indiana. And my home is going to be surrounded on 3 sides. And we decided to have our home appraised. So we called an appraiser in Hamilton County because we didn't want anyone from Madison County, because we didn't want them to be biased. So this appraiser drove into our community and he seen a whole bunch of signs and he asked me what they were, and I said, just appraise the house and I'll tell you later. And he did, and he came over to me and he said, okay, now what's these signs about? And she said, I'm gonna have a solar farm on 3 sides of my house, on the massive large-scale solar farm, 15 to 20-foot solar panels. And he said to me, you might as well bulldoze your house and sell the land to the developer, because it will be worth nothing. And she said, I'm gonna tell you right now today, me and my landowner, my friends over here, homeowners that are all impacted by this, we will at some point sue for an unfair taking of our property values. We will lawyer up together a class action lawsuit, or we'll do it individually. I know I will, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to go down, and I'm not going to stand here and take this and be impacted like this for my property values. I am going to lose everything that I and my husband have worked for. And we have put a lot of money into our home. It's completely renovated, and I just had a homeowner or an appraiser tell me to bulldoze my house. I'm not going to stand for it. We will be coming. And we have rights, and we're going to stand up for them. And that was Miss Katrina Hunter, and that's about how she said it too. With that impactful voice and tone, there's nothing wrong with that. Not one thing wrong with that. And she's a wonderful lady. And the day we stopped Lone Oak Solar, she was one of the first phone calls.
Thank you. All right, if a solar lease were to prevent the developer from taking responsibility of the nuisance, I think we kind of read through that earlier. Does a non-participating landowner, would they have to sue the leaseholder instead for the nuisance if the developer doesn't take responsibility?
Again, I'm not an attorney, so that's a legal question. Even the question before about legal advice, I would tell you both, and anyone here, you need to consult your legal counsel over those situations. I really don't know. I would just speak for myself. If my neighbor was impacting me and I had problems and we couldn't resolve them, I would be seeking an attorney. Absolutely. The unfair taking is, from my understanding, that's against the government. So the government made this decision to impact you, and so that would be an unfair taking lawsuit. So, but again, you all need to speak to attorneys and get proper legal guidance on those things.
Thank you. Are you aware of any fires, tornadoes, or other natural disasters that affected a built solar farm?
So there's been plenty of solar fires. You know, those happened on the Amazon warehouses. There's lots of different ones. Recently in Jasper County, where Mr. Duttlinger has his Wheatfield Solar, Wheatfield, Indiana, there was a tornado that went through there. And lo and behold, I actually happened to know one of the homeowners that was impacted. How God does this is a small world, I don't know. I went several years ago and photographed a combined driving event with horses. Met a lady that ends up having a horse farm up there. The tornado went right through that and covered her pastures, her home, everything in broken glass. And she told me that the county emergency management said they needed hazmat to pick that up. She has photographs. There was glass everywhere and trying to pick all of that up. I have no idea how in the world she was able to, I haven't followed up with her, but she wouldn't turn her horses out to graze. I mean, you got all this debris everywhere. It was a massive, just 2 miles. She told me that they found debris over 2 miles away. So, yeah, a tornado can wipe it out. And just so you know too, back in 2019, I did not know this, but Tornado Alley has shifted. And obviously, we get more tornadoes here in Indiana than we used to. And I didn't realize that. I thought that was out in Kansas, Nebraska, but I'm like, oh my gosh. So, you know, we have all these solar, and every time I see something going in the northern part, I think of Mammoth Solar in Stark County and Pulaski and Jasper up there. I mean, it's, you know, they get a lot of tornado activity. So, yeah, there you go. One night of Mother Nature and it's gone. But I worry about all of the leaching and the chemicals, and that is all true. Professor Heinecker, Professor Eggerlin have all spoken about what's in solar panels.
Thank you. Do you view solar farms and data centers as directly related?
Okay, so I don't know that solar is related to the data centers. It's more battery energy storage. I've been hearing people talk about BESS projects being cited with data centers, but not so much that I've really heard about solar being that. They're definitely impactful zoning. In Madison County, we do have a process where we force a zoning change on all of these endeavors to high impact. It'll no longer be agricultural. If you're going to approve one of these, it's going through a zoning change with high impact. So it first starts at the Planning Commission with favorable, unfavorable, or neutral recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners will vote. If they vote yes, then it's got to go to the BZA and get a special use designation. So it's got to clear 3 boards of education, 3 boards of scrutinizing these projects, and that's the type of oversight that these projects do need. And I don't care if it's data centers or BESS projects, wind, solar. These are massive projects that can impact your county and the people in it for a long time. They need that oversight. So I'd highly recommend that your planning and your commissioners look at the Madison County process ordinance that we have. It's just 2 pages that guides all of these into more scrutiny. But we do have a very detailed solar ordinance. Solar is the only one that's really spelled out very detailed. We're working on BESS right now. We're under moratorium for BESS and data centers.
And we are too.
Good.
All right, we'll do one last question. 8:10.
I was planning to be here till 8:30, so I can keep going if y'all want.
So we'll break down from formal Q&A and then welcome to stand around and
Sure.
have informal Q&A.
Sure.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. A common response to our concerns about solar is it's their land, they should be able to do what they want. Or what about property rights? What would you respond to this?
That quote that I said earlier, that property rights go in both directions, the right to use your land, they don't have the right to trump over you. And when something can be proven that is injurious, it's up to your county government to protect you. Indiana code zoning laws have a duty. Planning commission members have a duty to protect all of those. And my whole thing is, if there's no injury to property values, then why doesn't the developer just buy you out? Why don't they just buy it out? You know, you want to know of a project that did get built responsibly? In 2019, the largest solar farm in the United States was in it's in Minnesota, Chisago County, North Star, that's the name of it, North Star. The developer bought all of this. They bought the land to build the solar farm. It was brown lands, it was not prime farmland, so it wasn't very good, it was not productive, it was very sandy land. The farmer who lived right in the middle, he sold out, he sold all of it, that's fine. And all these homes, all the homes on the perimeter, the solar developer bought them too. Great. You know, we have full community support, full community compliance. The whole community said, okay, good. Some of those people didn't want to move. So, you know, they held out, they got a little bit more money, but the solar developer ended up buying everybody out. And it's a little bit different process in Minnesota than it is in Indiana. They have a regulatory commission, it's called a PUC, Public Utility Commission. They have oversight, anything that's over 50 megawatts, they have oversight. And so when a lot of the neighbors were complaining, they came out and said, what's the problem? What are you guys complaining about? And they gave them all their complaints. And they said, okay, well, the solar developer, he's gonna buy you out. And but anybody that's moving back into these homes, they don't wanna see it. So he said, we're gonna put natural wood fencing around the perimeter of it, with exited corners for a corridor for any wildlife. So they didn't use barbed wire and fencing. They did a nice aesthetics. They used berms. And he said, we're gonna have 3 rows of trees. I talked to Steve Putnam, the code enforcement officer on this project. And he said that they would put trees, 3 rows, you know, mature, staggered so they couldn't see it. And he said, and they didn't want to hear it. So basically their ordinance, you know, he said, we don't want to see it, we don't want to hear it. So that's what they did. And they built it responsibly. But I will tell you this, when the solar developer bought those homes and then built the project and then went to resell them, he lost over $620,000 from the time that he built them or paid for those homes to the time that he had to sell them. So still, even though they did build it responsibly, a lot of people didn't want to spend that money to buy those homes. So $620,000 some dollars was lost. $627,219 to be exact. My posters have been through so many county fairs. This was my life for several years to educate, and I didn't stop till my government listened to me. But anyways, that is how you can build solar responsibly, buy people out, but your property rights are just as important as your neighbor's property rights. And when he's signing a lease, just like I read that letter, you can waive your rights to noise, nuisances, and all those things, but I have not. When have him give you that lease. Say, what did you sign your rights away? And I'll tell you, there was something really screwy on one of these other leases in Jefferson County. The way it read, I ran that by a couple attorneys, but it almost sounded as if that landowner who signed, like he gave the adjacent land, which he did not own, like it was almost as if he took responsibility for allowing the neighbor to be injured. I would never have signed that lease. I can't even tell you how many attorneys I've talked to that said, I can't believe people are signing these leases. But when you listen to Tula Duttlinger speak at the area APC meeting in Tippecanoe County, she'll get you that video. You've got to listen to that. He thought that they had a really good ironclad lease. They went through several revisions, had their own legal counsel, and this still happened to him. So you need to read those, and anyone signing solar leases really needs to have that scrutinized heavily.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. One last round of applause for Denise. And then this is a ton of information up here. Please take pictures. We will start dispersing things as we go, but it's right here, so take pictures. And don't forget to donate. We're pretty much every dollar tonight donated is getting matched. So, okay, Denise has one more thing, and then we're gonna break out informal Q&A.
Indiana solar status. I believe it's indianasolarstatus.com. Just Google it, Indiana solar status. It was put together by the Huntington folks up in Huntington, and they went through the state of Indiana to find out who owned solar and how much solar was in the state of Indiana. The one thing that will be very, very concerning is who owns them. Do you realize very few Americans own them? It's like Qatar, France, Canada, I can't even remember all of them, all these different countries. And I have been saying, if America doesn't own our own power sources, isn't that a national security? I don't know. Y'all tell me. I'm not comfortable with that.
All right. Thanks, Denise. All right, guys, we're going to break out.